For those of you who follow me on Facebook, I posted a video of me driving in a Waymo. Well, I wasn't driving. That's the whole thing about Waymo. And I thought, oh, how cool. This is so cool and so fun. And I'm going to post a video and people are going to, think, oh, what an adventure. But I posted it on Facebook and I got comments like, never, not me. It's like I can't do that. People were not having, certain people were like, I'm not going to set foot in a Venmo. And other people look at it as a sense of adventure. And I could sleep in a not Venmo. I could sleep in a Waymo. I could sleep in one. And see, yeah, Carol says, way no. So it's interesting because the Waymo is a neutral event, and yet there's something around it. A Waymo is it's a self-driving car. It's kind of what Tesla is trying to do in Texas right now, or what they sort of do remotely. But these are actual cars that are like taxis. They're like they are in the Uber market. They're in the Lyft market, but the car picks you up and there's nobody driving it. It's computer driven. So I think it's fun. Check out my Facebook wall if you want to see the video. Yeah, very prevalent in the Silicon Valley. Yeah. So I've driven them now and then, and just I've ridden in them now and then, and it's interesting thinking about how there seems to be 50-50 among the people I've asked that, yeah, they love it. No, I'm never going to get in one. It's scary. That's horror. I can't, I want to be in control, you know, and it's sort of symbolic of a lot of fears. We place opinions around something that is neutral many times. And some people they love roller coasters. Some people hate roller coasters. I don't like roller coasters, right? And that's another example. So fear is often in the mind of the beholder. I read about a year ago on Reddit that 97% of the fear and worry that's flying around in your head will never come to pass. And whether you agree with that number or not, we have a lot of fears that are a waste of a lot of things. Think about what fear does to you. It takes away sleep. It takes away a mental space. It occupies a huge mental space, especially when fear is big. It's the only thing you can see. And it drains your energy. It certainly affects your vibe. It affects your whole life. It throws your system into this fight or flight mode. Um, so it's something that we can work on because I'm going to separate fear into two ideas today. There is useful fear and there is unuseful fear. And I would say that same percentage, that 97%, I would say that I'm just going to posit that 3% of the fears that we have are useful fears. And you may think of Waymo as a useful fear, right? Uh, but think about this. Okay. It's a useful fear to say, I'm afraid of stepping out into the crosswalk while the light is red and cars are coming back and forth at 60 miles an hour. Okay. I'm afraid to drive on a slick, rainy day on a one-way road on a cliff over the ocean. Doing this really fast. Especially in a Waymo. I'm afraid of doing that. So these things are useful fears because they're keeping you alive. I think fear was designed to keep you alive. There's the old cave cave person analogy of when you see the saber-toothed tiger or the saber-toothed tiger, boy, you're afraid because yes, you need to start running to stay alive. So then this other half, this other let's say 97%, this other huge, the majority of the fear that we may be feeling I'm saying is unuseful. And wouldn't it be nice if we could uh, address some of that? Because fear can stop us in our tracks. Fear can make the world smaller. I'll explain that a little bit more. It makes our world smaller. It makes us unhappy and anxious. We are hyper vigilant. Our nervous systems are attenuated and tuned into this hyper vigilance. I know a lot of people, politically, holding on to this extreme level of tension and perhaps fear in certain communities. And uh, we're not meant to. This society, the news, no matter what side of the fence you're on politically, the news sells fear, and they like to keep us keyed up. My mom handed me down fear, and I'm curious, as you think of someone in your family who maybe handed down fear reactions, my mom was very dramatic when she was expressing fear. Um, I just randomly remembered this morning she would always like be afraid that the house was going to catch on fire, and she would go back into the house before leaving on a trip. We would all be in the car, and she would run in there, and she would turn off make sure the stove was turned off, make sure the water wasn't running, and all those things. And while those are good behaviors, then we would get back in the car, and then she would say, "Wait, I'm going to go back in again." And other things related to that same topic, like, uh, "Shh, do you hear that? I think I hear a water leak. I think it's a water leak in the house. You haven't lived and you don't know what it's like to have a water leak in the house." And even though it's true to have a water leak in the house is a bad thing, to be constantly keyed up over, is there a water leak going on? These are, hyper vigilant things, right? Um, Other kind of fear. I was afraid of elevators from when I was as young as I can remember till about maybe 11 years old, probably. And I know it sounds silly. And I I think it was because I saw a movie in which someone was stuck in an elevator for the entire movie. And it was kind of like a scary, not a horror film, but it was like they didn't know it was on a Friday and businesses had closed and they didn't know if they were going to be rescued, and they visualized their dead bodies being found on Monday morning. They didn't know if they had enough air and food, and it was just this scary thing about the elevator. So I became afraid of elevators. Do you have any funny fears? Because okay, um, elevators, yeah, they can be scary if the elevator goes out, but most of the time, elevators are part of our life. Elevators and escalators, we kind of need them in many situations, don't we? So I got over that fear. But for a while, I let it shrink my world because we would be someplace with the whole family, and my dad had to go with me up the stairs while the rest of the family took the elevator. They had to wait for us. Um, Useful fears can be a good thing, like I said, but unuseful fears take up. Oh, I'm going to read this. Chris says, when I went to the beach as a toddler, I was afraid of the sand. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't understand that fear, but I'm saying, yeah, all of us have our unique fears. So think about, oh, and Amy is still afraid of the sand. Okay, I'll stop reading the chat. Um, think about this. A fear that you have. Think of a fear that you would deem as unuseful fear, and how it can sometimes occupy the whole size of this room energetically. It's bigger than anything, but the event itself, whatever it was that happened or that you think might happen or that maybe never will happen, isn't it maybe an event that's the size of an apple or an apple seed? It's a very small thing. But the time that you spend and the energy that you spend worrying about this thing, okay? I was always afraid of contrast dye during a CT scan or an MRI, okay? So afraid because I heard that someone had a bad experience. And I worried about it and I would refuse. I had so many MRIs and CT scans where I refuse that dye to be injected into my bloodstream. And one time the doctor said, okay, you can refuse right now, but you might die because if you refused. All right. And so I said, okay, do it. Go ahead and do it. Well, they did it and it was fine. In fact, it was almost kind of fun. So all this fear was created in my mind for nothing. And I'm not saying that everything is like that, but I'm saying there are so many things that are like that. And the problem is we may be recycling these fears over and over again. Maybe a story we tell ourselves, like the elevator, and we ruminate, we get worked up, we catastrophize, we envision worst case scenario. Uh, Reverend David Bruner used to say, "Worrying is rehearsing. Worrying is rehearsing. You're gonna make it so if you keep on worrying." But I don't think that. I don't think you're gonna make it so if you keep worrying. I think you're just gonna make yourself miserable if you keep worrying. That's what I think. But um, let me spend a minute about what is fear really? It's not a physiological body response to a situation. It's a physiological response to our thoughts about what we think the situation represents. Okay. Like I said, the Waymo is neutral. It's our thoughts around what could happen that creates the fear. So we can unlearn, we can deconstruct those thoughts, we can disassemble those thoughts. Um, Maybe it's something your object of fear is something that happened or something that's happening or something that may never happen. I've got a lot of those. But think about how many things, how many times have you been afraid in your life? How many minutes have you been afraid in your life? You know that song 525,600 minutes, that's how many minutes are in a year. How many minutes do you spend being afraid? Millions. Millions. So it's so valuable to think about addressing this, and we can address it in a spiritual way. But back to the definition of fear, they say, and they, in this case, is psychology today, says that there are basic fears. Extinction, meaning we think we're not going to survive. Suffering, separation, unworthiness, or what other people think, loss of control. They say those are the big ones. But it just so happens that there is something called the seven veils of illusion. The seven veils of illusion. And the list is this. Here are the seven veils of illusion. Separation, scarcity, unworthiness, death, control, time, and fear itself. Those are the seven veils of illusion. And I'll say that again. But I think what they're saying is these are illusory. So, separation. We believe here at Unity, we are not separate from our divine source. We're not separate from God. And like Einstein said, it's an optical illusion that we're even separate from each other. We're never alone. Scarcity. Here at Unity and an all new thought, we believe that this is an abundant world crammed full of abundance in all things. Unworthiness. How can we, if we're fully accepting that there's no duality and therefore God of our understanding loves us, we are loved uh, more. Someone else is not loved more than we are. Someone else is not loved more than we are by the God of our understanding. And so that is the seat of our value, our worthiness is, and especially when we think about God as us, we are divine. How can we not be worthy? Death, the next one. There is no death. There's just transitioning to another life. Control, well, uh, that's an illusion. But if you want to think about the Serenity Prayer, we can handle control. Time is an illusion. Fear is an illusion. Now, I actually disagree with this one. This was the last one on the list. fear is very real, but that we, the reason why we're fearing what we fear is the illusion. That's the illusion that we're here to dispel. So, um, it reminds me of a talk I did last year where I said Steve Martin in this movie LA Story said, "I've had 7 heart attacks, all of them imagined." And I love that. I love that quote. I've had 7 heart attacks, all of them imagined. Um, so I'm not saying that all of our fears are unfounded. Many fears may be valid, but these unuseful fears could be running aspects of our life. Are there fears that are running aspects of your life? Are there things that you've avoided? It's like, oh, I can't make that 3 weeks from now because I've got to wash my guitar that night, or or you know, I've got a commitment. I'm sorry, I can't do that. Have you turned something down ever because you were afraid? Um, that's up to you what you do, but have you ever made decisions that felt like it was making your life and your world shrink? Maybe you were afraid of going to a mixer or a party or a social gathering. There are other examples. Not that it's wrong, because those introverts here, they would much rather stay home. But are there situations where you've said no to something where it began to close your world down a little bit? So, uh, it could be a choice. I have a fear of heights, but I choose to drive up to the high part of the mountain anyway because my desire to see the beauty outweighs the fear. But if you're afraid of flying, you don't have to fly. I am afraid to skydive. I do not have to face my fears and skydive. You do not have to face your fears. I think that's a common saying. You have to face your fears in order to like somehow be spiritually advanced. I say no. But if the fear is something that you want to grow into and you're making your life smaller by being afraid of something and it's making you miserable, then yes, take a look at that fear. Not wanting to skydive is not hurting me at all. I'm fine with that decision. But other fears I have in my life have been, they've filled up this room. And so I want to deal with them. And imagine this, imagine the freedom that comes from replacing all this energy. What will you do with all those free millions of minutes in your life if you don't have the fear occupying that space? So we begin in a Mark Mesidorian way of thinking about is there a unuseful is there an unuseful fear that you think about it, it no longer serves you, this fear, and you're ready to release it today, or you're ready to reduce it, you're ready to turn the volume down on it. Okay. I was sitting with Pat Kleinberg, Reverend Pat Kleinberg, the other day, and she said, there is so much hope in taking tiny steps. And that's part of what this process is of turning things down. There's so much hope in taking tiny steps, and that's a safe way to go. So, along this vein, several things we can do. Teal Swan said this about fear and using fear as a teacher. She said, fear is an illusion created for the purpose of expansion. Fear always means something needs to be looked at and there's something to be learned. Examine your fear. Make self-loving decisions as a result of examining that fear. And maybe if you fear speaking in public, upon examination, you'll find that it is the self-loving thing to do to go through with it and make yourself speak in public. But maybe you'll find that it's the self-loving thing to not go through with speaking in public. But she says, never ignore your fear. Use it in some way. Use it in some way. So I think that's a lovely saying. So I'd like for us to uh, it's easy to grab something to write with or to go into meditation here in Zoom, and I'd like to just kind of guide us through some thoughts, some quotes, and then some affirmations that I find really valuable around fear, about dissolving fear, about transmuting fear energy. And so let's just take a deep breath and just notice this safe space you're in, surrounded by like-minded people. Just being grateful for this opportunity to sit here in the first place on Zoom and talk about consciousness and improving yourself and spirituality, which means working on ourselves so we can change our lives for the better and perhaps change someone else's life and change the world. So, from that basis, as you kind of move into this guided meditation, I begin with a quote from Eckhart Tolle, and that is, thoughts are not the problem. It's the importance that we give the thought that gives power to it and gives power to a fear. Let's breathe into that. This is my favorite quote of the whole talk, or actually one of two. It's by Wayne Dyer. Don't believe everything you think. Don't believe it in all of your opinions about the object of fear. Don't believe everything you think. So, thinking for a moment about in your childhood when you would make shadows on the wall, and did you ever notice if you shined a flashlight on that shadow, what happens? The shadow disappears. So let's just shine a light on this subject, knowing that we're safe and we can just turn down the volume 1%, 5%, 10% on any fears that we're ready today to let go of. Any fear that feels like, hey, you know something? This is one that's silly that I'd like to work on. I'm willing to turn down the volume 10% and just visualize the size of this fear, just like an object in front of you. Just it was taking up the whole room, but now it's only taking up the size of a little apple. And now it's shrinking and becoming the size of a little apple seed. And now we're just thinking about just unuseful fears in general. We're just inviting them to evaporate, dissipate, dissolve. We're diffusing the whole situation, knowing that when we think of a fear, it's just a programmed response in our nervous system that causes our heart to beat faster, and that too will pass. So I breathe into the safety of this room right now. I breathe into the safety of not catastrophizing. I breathe into the safety of the certainty of this present moment. And here comes my favorite quote. Stop being afraid of what could go wrong and start being excited about what could go right. Stop being afraid of what could go wrong and start being excited about what could go right. Notice the energetic shift that happens. We're transmuting that fear energy, and we're saying that it will have no power over us. It's just a feeling, and that feeling will come and go. So just a few more minutes. Let's just take a deep breath, continuing just for a couple of minutes more. We're thinking about liberating our mind and liberating our thoughts, emancipating ourselves from mental slavery, as Bob Marley said, emancipating ourselves from the mental slavery for which we have the key. And we can just gently unlock and let ourselves out of this cage. And the final antidote that I'll share is that there's a fearlessness that comes from trusting, whether you call it higher power, source, our connection to God, Christ consciousness. So from leaning into and resting into this source and from viewing ourselves as falling into the arms of the God of our understanding. And like I said a couple of weeks ago, when in doubt, just think of God. So in the safety of the room that you're in, I'd like you to repeat after me. I have a few affirmations. The first one is, my hope is stronger than any fear. And repeat after me, my God is bigger than any fear. I'm shining a light on unuseful fear. Most of my fears are just a habit. My awareness can change everything. I'll feel the fear and do it anyway. I'll say that again. I'll feel the fear and do it anyway. I'll notice the fear and say, that's nice. I'll notice the fear and say, I'm moving on to the next thing. I won't let fear steal my power. I'm grateful for this change in me. I'm grateful for turning down the volume of these fears today. And all is well. And so it is. And Amy, I'm going to spotlight you to complete this message.
My God is bigger than any fear. My God is bigger than any fear. 97% of the fear in your head will never come to pass. It's mostly truly unuseful and can stop us dead in our tracks. Fear is handed down. Maybe you heard your mother speak about the house catching on fire. Wait, do you hear that water leak? The world gets small when we are run by fear, and the energy spent can suck out all the air. It It's an optical illusion that we are all a part. You see, there is only one love. There is only one God. Behind the veil is the truth right here. No need for fear, no need for fear. Just be right here, just be right here, just be right here. My God is bigger than any fear. My God is bigger than any fear. We get worked up and we catastrophize, rehearsing the worst, worry to fly. You may be afraid of heights. You don't have to skydive, but you might wish to see the beauty in a mountain high afternoon drive. See, the world gets small when we are run by fear, and the energy spent, it can just suck out all the air. Oh, it's an optical illusion that we are all a part. You see, there is only one love, yes, and there is only one God. Behind the veil is the truth right here. There's no need for fear, and no need for fear. So just be right here, just be right here. Shine the light, shine the light. There is so much hope in taking tiny steps. So don't believe everything you think. That's it.
Thank you, Amy. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's got to be like the best one. That's got to be the best one. And I didn't give you a copy of the talk beforehand. You didn't know about the talk topic until you joined the Zoom today. You're amazing. You're amazing.